Welcome, everybody. I'm Tim Rand, and we're having a wonderful program on bicycle commuting tonight. We have two wonderful year-round bike commuters who have joined us to talk about bicycle commuting issues. We're sorry we did have a third that was planned, Pastor Travis Norvell, but he had a situation at his church. He's a pastor, so we're really disappointed that he couldn't make it, but we understand, and hopefully we'll connect with him another time. So, do you guys, our panelists tonight are Chris Chavie and Sophie Beal, and they're both year-round commuters. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves, starting with Chris? Don't forget to unmute. Maybe I can do it.
Yeah,
No.
Tim, if I could just say a few things, just so
Sure.
I have this recorded. This is Bicycle University for April 18th, 2024. And my name's Edward Ero. I'm the in charge or the coordinator for the group. So, and Tim's introduced our speakers. This is the fifth session of BikeU for the 2024 TCBC ride year. If you've not heard the previous sessions on bicycle maintenance, randoneering, the Minnesota Bicycle Alliance, and free bikes for kids, as well as all the other sessions from the 2023 ride year, which on Ride with GPS, the Minneapolis Public Schools bike education program, winter bicycling, and fat bikes, and then all the sessions of the 2022 ride year. So we're building up quite a library now. And that includes stuff on the environment, TCBC history, equity in bicycling, electric bikes, the Greenway. So, and all those are on the BikeU page off the TCBC main page. Just go to the BikeU and you can click and you can see all the sessions. And then everything is on the TCBC YouTube channel. And then after tonight's session, I'll probably have the recording up tomorrow sometime. I want to thank all our Council of Regents, including Tim, who's really coordinating the program tonight, but also John Benda and Dan Miller for their work. If there's anyone else out there in the club that would like to join, we're really looking for other folks to participate because we really want to get subjects that all the club members would like to see. And I wanted to do one last big shout out to Jim Pedersen, who's really been a big help to me in setting up BikeU. He is stepping back now, and I think Mike, you're going to be kind of the interface now with the technology committee. So appreciate that. But Jim was really a great help. I'm asking all our folks that are on the session tonight to please keep your audio muted, but do keep your video on so that we can show who is in attendance. Remember, we are recording this. If you don't have yourself on mute and make any noise, it switches to your video and thus recording gets messed up. There will be a question and answer session after the presentation, but during the meeting, you can enter questions in the Zoom chat function. Tim and I will be monitoring those questions and make sure they get answers during the Q&A. Please do not interrupt the speaker to ask questions during the presentation. And so, Tim, back to you.
Okay, yeah, if you guys could just introduce yourselves a little bit, and I think you guys are really passionate about bike commuting. And I know there's a lot of challenges that we'd like to talk about with bike commuting. So, tell us a little bit about, how you got into bike commuting and why you like it so much and why it's worth it with all the challenges of weather and construction and so forth. Okay, Chris, if you could start, I think you're muted right now.
My name's Chris Chavie. I write the Minnesota Trail Navigator blog, which is a resource blog for cyclists of all abilities. It's full of resources, maps, information on events, equipment, gear, etc. I got back into bicycling after about a 15-year hiatus, and about 12, 13 years ago. And that's right around the same time that I started up the Minnesota Trail Navigator blog, because I didn't see any resource like that had that type of information on the web at the time. So I decided to create one and use it as a resource for myself and other cyclists. And got more and more into cycling after that, and found that because of my job, I work in the restaurant industry, I didn't have time to ride that much. I was usually riding on my days off, which weren't the weekends when everybody else was riding at events and those type of things. So I found the only way I could get more ride time in was if I biked to work every day. And started doing that, fell in love with it right away. Couldn't wait to get done with work so I could hop on the bike and bike the 10 miles home. And been doing it solid now for, I bet you, 7, 8 years now. Started out with mostly just, spring through fall, and I ended up getting a fat bike back in 2014 and started riding in the winter too. And really enjoy it. And I am bummed out on the days that it's heavy rain or situations with the weather where I can't bike to work and I got to take the car, and that kind of bums me out. Like last year, I ended up putting on more miles on my bikes than I did on my truck. And that's with, running errands and everything with the truck. But I really enjoy it, and would like to get more people into it as well too. That's kind of what I've done through my social media, is to kind of highlight my riding and my commutes and stuff, to let everybody know that, hey, it's not that hard. You can do it.
Great, that's fantastic. 20 miles a day, um, every day, or most days. Okay, Sophie, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. Hey, everyone. I was curious too if you all could tell me on a scale of 1 to 5. 1, I have done no all-weather commuting, to 5, I've done this before, I feel confident. Could you all tell me where you're at? So nothing to a lot. Okay, pretty middle. All right. Thanks. So I've been bike commuting since college, but I only was doing fair weather commuting. And then when I moved to Minnesota in let's see, in 2012, I saw all these people biking year round, and that made me want to try it. And for me, the game changer was getting studded tires. As soon as I had studded tires, it opened up a whole nother set of months for me. And my bike commute is shorter. It's 5.5 miles one way. And there are a bunch of things I like about it. Likewise, I started bike commuting when I had very small children. I didn't have a lot of time, so it just integrated exercise and time outside into my day. I also can say that I come home a better person because I've been on my bike for 5.5 miles. Anything that was going on at work that was stressful is just kind of lifted, and it has a very calming effect for me. So that's really great. And I don't work somewhere that has showers, and I'm happy to talk about, you don't have to have a fancy place where you work in order to bike commute. I don't have a fancy bike. It really doesn't take that much. So I can say it was the Twin Cities that motivated me to become a winter cyclist. I saw so many people doing it, and I thought it would be fun to try. And all the people I knew who were winter cyclists were all men. So part of me just thought, okay, no, more women should be doing this too. So now I know lots of women who are winter cyclists, winter commuters as well. But those were a couple of things that had me kind of, that inspired me to become an all-year commuter.
Great, thank you, Sophie. And Sophie's also a TCBC member, so you might see her on rides sometimes when she's not working or commuting or being a parent, but also you run into her if you're doing a recreational ride or some of your own commuting oftentimes. So anyway, to start off our discussion, I sent out some questions for thought. If either of you have comments on this, I just have my first issue is what are your strategies for dealing with weather issues? I heard studded and fat tires mentioned for winter. A few other examples, ice on shaded trails, narrow roads due to snow plowing, rain with mucks spraying all over your bike and body, body temperature regulation. So there's a tendency, I know, to have a lot of sweating and then get cold again and having extremities with frostbite. And what is your kind of line in the sand where weather risk is just too much? I assume neither of you would ride in a tornado or anything like that.
I'm unmuted, so I guess I'll start. I ride in rain pants a lot. I think it's really helpful to have, I just wear full rain gear when it's raining. It helps a lot to have just good winter boots too, to ride in so you're not getting wet. And I try to always wear things that have a half zip or a full zip so I can regulate my temperature. And I mean, yeah, I wouldn't ride in a tornado, but it's never been so cold I said I couldn't ride.
How about snowstorms?
I don't ride in deep snow. I don't have a fat tire bike. So I can
Okay.
only ride what my studded tires can handle.
Mm-hmm. And do you have much trouble with traffic in the winter when the roads get narrow?
I can say the bike trails that I ride on, the snow gets
Mhm.
cleared on them, which is incredible. I don't
Yeah.
know how many cities in the country that happens in. It's pretty amazing. So
It seems like Minnesota's pretty good about that.
yeah, so it gets a little messy on roads, but once I'm on the trail, it's fine.
Chris, any comments?
Yeah, I follow the weather extremely closely because I leave for work in the morning, so I'm usually leaving anywhere from 8 to 8:30 in the morning. It's usually cooler then because it hasn't warmed up the day progresses. And then by the time I leave work, which is usually around 8:30 at night, the temperature is coming back down. So I have to plan for 2 rides. So I'm always keeping track of the weather because the morning commute may require different clothing than the evening commute does. I may have to dress lighter or heavier depending on the weather. And I always have a backup plan, a freak rainstorm come out of the blue that the weatherman said was a 20% chance, and now it's a downpour. And I'll usually bring along some spare apparel just in case in my bag. And as far as the routes, there is issues with snow in the wintertime. And if I am unsure of my route, I won't ride it because I don't want to get caught where, hey, I can't ride this stuff. So sometimes I'll actually scout the route out on my way into work. I'll drive that day. Oh, it's pretty clear along here. I'm going to ride to work tomorrow. And if there is areas that are sketchy, I'll know where to go as a detour so I can continue on, ride safely. Because shoulders do get quite narrow in the wintertime. And then as far as my body, I like to stay warm and dry, and I found the best way to do that is using 3-layer waterproof, breathable clothing, whether it be a jacket or waterproof pants, waterproof shoes or shoe covers helps. And then using the right bike for the conditions. If there's a bunch of snow on the ground, I'm not taking my gravel bike out or my, my daily commuter. Chances are the fat bike's getting pulled out that day. And if
Mhm.
there's icy stretches, the fat bike's got studded tires in the wintertime, so I don't have to worry about slipping on the ice and going down where I would with my gravel bike because I don't have studded tires on that. And then I also over the years have come to learn what to wear for the different temperatures. So you can find that critical point where you have the right amount of clothing where you're starting off a little cold, but you're not going to overheat 2 or 3 miles down the road and you're peeling stuff off. And that's the key is finding that right balance of clothing to where your exertion isn't going to make you overheat, which down the road you're going to become cold, if you sweat too much. So that is key is learning what to wear for the weather conditions to prevent yourself from getting cold from overheating. And then I use daytime running lights during the day just because drivers aren't expecting to see a cyclist cruising down the road in the middle of January, So any little extra thing that I can get myself seen, whether it be bright clothing or reflectives or daytime running lights, I'm going to use those to get me better seen. As far as line in the sand for when I don't commute, it's usually pouring thunderstorms, lightning. I'm not going to ride on those days. I'm going to drive in. Heavy snowfall. I know there's going to be 4 or 5 inches of snow that day. I'm not riding in because I've ridden home in 4 inches of snow that they weren't expecting that much. And it's a tough 10 miles. So I can skip those days. And then usually if it's extremely windy days, 25, 30 mile an hour winds, it's just not worth it. You burn up so much energy battling the wind and it's just not fun. So I'll skip those days as well. And in the wintertime, extreme wind chill factors, it's 8 degrees out, but the wind chill is 26 below. I'm staying home then, or leaving the bike at home, and I'm going to drive in that day. Though I do have the gear for those extreme conditions, it's just not as fun to ride. So I'll drive in those days. And then the other thing is, if there are really salty, slushy roads, I've destroyed 2 fat bikes of winter commuting just because you have to wash your bike all the time. And even then, that salt just destroys your drivetrain, your components, your frame starts to rust. So to me, it's not worth it. So I leave the fat bike in the garage on those days when the roads are wet and sloppy. If they're dry and frozen, I'll be out there.
A couple questions, Chris. Do you use studded tires also, or do you not have trouble with slipping on fat bikes? I used to do some winter biking, and a lot of people would get fat bikes and they'd be really excited about them. But then when we got a lot of ice, sometimes they'd have some trouble even on a fat bike.
Yes, I do. As soon as we get significant snow and we have such a freeze thaw cycle in December that you're going to end up with ice everywhere. So come December, the studded tires go on and they usually stay on until the end of March. And then pressuring down your tires will also help from
Oh, yeah.
even with studs. If you have too much pressure in your tires, those tires can easily still slip out on the ice from you. So lower it down so it gets you a bigger, fatter footprint and gives you a little more stability on the ice.
And how about footwear? Do you guys use cleats in the winter, or do you just go with a regular platform pedal and as warm a boot as you can get?
I ride with cleats year round. I have 3 pairs of cycling boots that have the 2-bolt cleats in them, and yeah, I've done that for years. And the cycling boots today, they're pretty warm. You know, some of the ones have 200 to 400 grams of insulation in them. So pair that with some wool socks, your feet are going to stay nice and toasty. But studs are a must in the wintertime in Minnesota,
Yeah.
just simply because of the freeze thaw cycles.
Yeah, I wear cleats year round. I feel much safer in cleats. And I have a
Okay.
pair of winter boots that are 45 North, and then I have a pair of mesh summer
Yeah.
shoes.
Yeah, I personally, I like layering a lot. I just got this merino wool t-shirt that I keep talking about and bragging about on rides, how I keeps me so warm. I was just in New Zealand where they have the merino sheep, and it cost me a pretty penny, but I love it so much. And I was wearing shirt sleeves on Monday when everybody else had jackets on, just because of that base layer. So that's a really good strategy. Okay, next question. Sophie touched on this a little bit. Is it hard to make yourself presentable following a commute in extreme conditions? Are workplace facilities for showering and changing clothes necessary? And how about secure bike parking or bringing your bike inside?
I think the answers to these vary so much on your work conditions, right? But for me, I have the luxury of being able to just bring my bike into my office. I have an office that locks. It's my own space. So I bring my bike
Nice.
in every day. And something else that I do is I never ride in my work clothes, and I have a wardrobe in my office, and I often will bring in my work clothes on Sunday ironed and hang them up so that they're ironed, because I can't keep things that nice if I put them in a pannier bag. So I often do that. And then I keep a towel in my office. And once you commute a lot, you get really good about knowing how much to wear. So like Chris mentioned, you start out cold, but then you get to the right temperature, you don't sweat too much. So if I need to, I towel off, I have my clothes there. And I think it also helps that my boss is a bike commuter and a year-round bike commuter, kind of setting the tone for our office. I think it's helped enable more people to think that, okay, it's okay. It's okay if we get here and we're all a little bit disheveled in the beginning of the day. I think it really has made other people more comfortable by commuting. Especially it's made more people comfortable bringing their bike into their office. I didn't think that that was acceptable behavior until he started doing it. But then I thought, well, he's doing it. So then I just put newspaper down on my office floor so that my bike doesn't drip on the carpet. And that works just fine.
For me, as far as arriving to work and getting prepared for the day, we do have showering facilities at my work. However, I usually don't use them except for in the summer when it's hot, because I do ride in the morning and the evening, so it's usually cooler. So if I layer or wear the appropriate clothing for the temperature, and I just keep a moderate pace on the way in, I'm not racing in or anything, I'm not really going to break into too much of a sweat, maybe a light sweat, and then little deodorant and change of clothes once I get to work. But those days where it's, 85 degrees in the morning and I'm heading in August, a shower is a must. And as far as secure bike parking, I'm able to bring my bike into work, and I just store it in a utility room where it's out of the way. Nobody goes in and messes with it or anything, and it's out of the way of operations. So, and it's secure, which is, I'm fortunate to have that. Because there's a lot of commuters that don't have the opportunity to bring their bike into work, and they have to lock it up outside, and then you risk theft. So I'm fortunate that I do have the shower facilities and in building parking.
Okay, that's great. Let's talk a little bit about behavioral issues when we're out biking and commuting to work. That can either be personal safety issues with, while there's, a lot of traffic and people out on the street. Do you have any particular strategies to deal with these types of problems? I know we all encounter them, especially interactions with cars.
Yeah, I've run into issues with drivers pretty much every day. It's usually distracted drivers or drivers that aren't paying attention because they're in a hurry, they're not paying attention to the road. My biggest pet peeve is failure to yield right of way. I run into that constantly. And the biggest place that I do is at intersections. Where you got people that are doing rolling right turns on red without stopping and without checking when I have the right of way to go through the crosswalk or if I'm on the road on the shoulder. And they will a lot of times refuse to yield the right of way and will just come whipping right through. And it's a huge pet peeve of mine and it's dangerous too. So I'm always scanning and looking for escape routes or areas that I can get out of the way of danger in a hurry. And I will anticipate, hey, they don't see this, or what happens if they do this? What's my game plan? And intersections are the worst. That's where I usually have most of my run-ins with bad drivers. So it'll be cruising along, and as soon as I'm approaching an intersection, I'm already scanning and looking at all the vehicles that are approaching the intersection, check the lights, and see what my game plan is and what my backup plan is if car A decides to blow the red or whatever. So I'm always have a way out. And I learned how to do that because I used to have a motorcycle years ago. And that was always my thing, was watching my mirrors, watching everything around me and leaving myself enough space where I can have a quick out in case imminent collision is about to happen. And I've had quite a few drivers where they get angry when I'll yell at them that they didn't yield the right of way. I had the right of way, and then they'll roll down their window and shout expletives or flip me off when, hey, I have the right of way. You guys are breaking the law. So I dealt with that a few times. So what I've learned to do a few things that I've implemented to at least help my personal safety. And that is I utilize my lane position, especially when approaching intersections, to be best seen by motorists. I don't want to be all the way over to the right where cars may not see me. So I may scooch over to the left a little so that I'm more visible to all the other drivers that are approaching the intersection. I use daytime running lights and reflectives. Daytime running lights will help get you seen compared to somebody that isn't running daytime running lights. They may be wearing black and motorists aren't going to see them, but if that popping white light, that will grab their attention, at least let them know that you're coming through. I also use a helmet light, which helps at night because I do a lot of my commuting at night, especially when coming up to intersections. If I see somebody rolling up, I can quick hit them with the light and let them know that I'm there, and that usually works to where if I didn't have a helmet light, they may roll that and it could be a collision. Also, I use a GoPro mounted on just under my bars for every ride, whether I'm doing a leisure ride or a gravel ride or commuting to work. Just in the event something happens. And I was almost hit by a car I stopped at a stoplight in Apple Valley, and I was on the shoulder, and there was a left turn lane, and then the lane that goes straight was to my left. And there was a car in the left turn lane. I was on the shoulder. The light was about to turn red, so I slowed down, and a big SUV came whipping up behind me, blew the red, and was maybe 2 feet from me. And it scared me because I could feel the rush of this big SUV, the wind going by, and they blew the red. I had it all on video. I sent the video to the Apple Valley Police Department. They did an investigation and determined that this driver was 29 inches from me when they passed. They ended up finding out who it was from my video because I had a screenshot of the license plate. Went to the house, gave the lady a moving violation, and the officer asked me, "Do you really want to pursue this?" I said, "Yes, that was a very dangerous situation. And this person needs to learn their lesson that they have to give cyclists space, otherwise somebody's going to get killed." So I roll with the camera. That's one time in the past 3 or 4 years that I had to do that. But at least I have something, because a cyclist's word to the police compared to a motorist, it seems like they always listen to the motorist. But if you have video proof, that is going to go much farther than someone's word. So that's why I always roll with the camera on. Another thing is situational awareness. Know what's going on around you. I had one situation where I was heading home at night, and I came up to a three-way stop, and noticed that there was a police officer rolling behind a vehicle with some lights. And well, that person decided to run from the cops and turned onto the street that I was on. But I knew that they were coming onto that street, so I immediately got off onto the sidewalk to keep from being hit. And they blew by me doing about 70 miles an hour in a residential area, and the cops whipping by. And so just being aware of what's going on around you can also help in those dangerous situations with automobiles. Have an escape route. I always have an escape route for most situations, especially at intersections. Analyzing potential hazards as you're approaching an intersection, or you're approaching an area where there's a bunch of traffic. Analyze it, have a planned route, also have an escape plan. And one of the biggest things that I've implemented, which has helped me a lot, is I have a Garmin rear-facing radar on my bike, which is a tail light, and it sends a signal to my Garmin computer and lets me know when cars are coming up behind me. So I can kind of glance back and go, oh, okay, he's giving me space. Or I look back and, oh, this guy's riding that line on the side pretty tight. I better adjust accordingly. So having a rear-facing radar does help tremendously. I would never ride without one now after having one. And then bike belts. Having a bike belt. In the summertime, people got their windows down. I'll come rolling along. They're looking the opposite way, and I'm going to cross in front of them. I'll ding my bell 3 or 4 times just to get their attention. They'll swing their head over, notice I'm there, so that they don't pull out right as I'm in front of them. So those are just some of the strategies that I have implemented over the years from what I've learned from riding, 4 or 5 days a week to work.
That was a great answer. Too much to
Yeah,
add.
I just looked over at the chat, and there was one question that Dan Miller put out that pertains to this discussion. What are the speed limits on the roads that you guys commute on? And do you see many cyclists on your commute? There's other comments too, but we'll get to those later.
Yeah, so my commute time is about 26 minutes in good weather, 30 in bad weather. Speed limits on roads 30, but I'm mostly on trails for most of my commute. And there are lots of cyclists on my commute. And the more the merrier. I feel much safer when there are other cyclists around. I don't like being the only one on a trail.
Well, I'm out in the suburbs, so I don't see as many commuters. More leisure cyclists is what I see. And most of the rides or roads that I ride on are the residential streets, so 30 miles an hour. There's a few roads that are, 45, 50 miles an hour that I'll be on. But the majority, over the years, I've come up with what I call my safe route to work. I have a lot of options and a lot of split offs, but I have this one specific route that I've had the least interactions with drivers. It seems to be the safest route. So I'll usually take that. Because some areas of a route that I've had issues with, and I'll avoid those stretches and add a new stretch that's a little safer. And riding through being in the suburbs, riding through residential areas is a little safer than getting out onto some of the trunk roads.
I could also add to that you start to know your route. There's certain places where people always do illegal U-turns. There's certain places where people always blow red lights. So every route has its own culture, and you'll ride better when you know it well.
And Chris, I'm glad you brought up that technique of when we're not in such dense traffic like Sophie and Edward and I are in, where you can have your mirror and see, traffic coming behind you. And you're worried about them giving you enough space or seeing you if, scooting out just a little bit for a while and then scooting back in as they come behind you. And it's a real art to not piss off a motorist, which is never a good thing, but at the same time, make yourself safe. So anyway,
Yeah, the dreaded squeeze by, I hate that. So I'll always use my lane position so that I'm over enough to where it's going to force the driver to pass in the adjacent lane, as opposed to if I'm close to the shoulder, they're going to want to squeak by you in that lane, and it does not give
Right.
you the 3 feet that you need.
right. And then when they come by, you see them coming by you, you can scoot over again, and it's safe for both of us. So anyway, next question, what kind of equipment works best for commuting? You've touched on that. Do you use the same bike all year round, or do you have different bikes? And what about tires, racks for hauling your stuff, other gear, backpacks, anything that you haven't touched on already?
Like to use sling bags or messenger bags as opposed to backpacks. They're so convenient. The strap runs across your chest, and you can flip them around real easy if you need to. I got an extra pair of gloves. These ones aren't doing the trick. You just flip the bag right around, pop it open, grab your gloves, throw the other ones in, swing it back around. No taking, you don't have to take it off like you would with a backpack to get access. And the ones that I have are waterproof, so I can be in the pouring rain and all my stuff stays nice and dry in it. And I have used waterproof stuff bags too to put my clothing in. So, that's, as a second measure to keep my stuff dry. And you want to use the right tire for the seasonal conditions. Come winter, I'm using a fat bike with studded tires. The rest of the year, like spring, summer, fall, I'm using my gravel bike, which has gravel tires on it with knobbies, which is great for the spring and the fall because there's a lot of debris on the roads. And gives me a little extra protection too, as opposed to a road tire with debris and rocks and staples or whatever on the road that could cause punctures. And then my road bike, I usually use that for, summer and fall riding when the roads are nice and clean. And And then I found for wet conditions, I'm not a fan of fenders. I don't have any fenders on any of my bikes, but
Defenders.
there's a little plastic clip-on under your seat rails fender called ass savers. They're real cheap, 10-12 bucks. I'll throw one of those on. It maybe extends 8 inches beyond my saddle, and it's just enough to keep that spray from just wetting your whole bottom side. So, and keep your butt dry. And then I like to use a helmet with forward and rearward facing light mounts, because I'll run with daytime running lights during the day, and then at night, front and rear lights. So, and then lights on my handlebars and on my seat. So I've got double lights forward, double lights rear, just to give me that extra visibility at night on dark roads where there may not be street lights. And then that with reflectives, motorists are going to see me out there.
I have one commuting bike that I use year round, and I have 2 sets of wheels to make it a little bit easier to switch back and forth from my studded tires to my regular tires, just like you might have snow tires with their own rims on your car. Just it makes it a little easier if you have another set of wheels. And then I have a second bike for road riding that I don't use for commuting. I have shoulder issues, so it doesn't work for me to use a messenger bag, and I use panniers on a rack on my bike. And I use pogies, so the mitts that go over your handlebars in the winter, and they're really easy to take on and off. So those are the adjustments I make to my bike in the winter. I put on the pogies, I put on my other set of wheels that have studs, and I reduce the pressure in my tires. John?
Yeah, Sophie, I don't think Chris had some great answers to how he deals with motorist behaviors, and I'm not sure if you got to talk about that. And I wanted to hear what you had to say.
Oh, I mean, I think the only things I'd add is often when I'm on a main street and there are people who need to turn left and they're on the side streets, I wave every time I go past them. I just assume that every motorist can't see me. So I just operate under that assumption, because it could be a really fast collision if they make that turn having not seen me. So I just like to wave, and they nod, they know, especially I find that helpful. And also a lot of people park their cars on the bike trail. So this is nothing different than your regular riding, you know about this, but there are a couple things I do to make sure that I don't get doored, car doored. So I look at people's mirrors to see if they're in the car. I look if their lights are on. I also I veer out if there isn't a car coming, just so that if someone did open the door, because I have had an experience of someone opening a door who had their car off and had a broken window, so that I had no way of knowing they were in the car. I try to veer out enough so that if they open their door, I won't get car doored.
You're muted, Tim.
Yeah, the computer told me. I'm impressed. Anyway, just one other issue. I wanted to say that I wanted to bring up the issue about our bicycling club. Twin Cities Bicycling Club is focused mainly on recreational group bicycling. Several years ago, Edward came up with the Green Miles program that was started to recognize members who cycle to the group ride start location. And I'm wondering if either or both of you can think of any ways that TCBC can broaden its orientation toward bicycling in general and specifically commuting.
Well, the thing that I came up with is you guys have a lot of group rides. I've never been a member of the club or gone on any of the rides, but I have seen your listing of all your rides. And one thing that I came up with is to break down those group rides into zones where they take place in the Twin Cities, where members can familiarize themselves with the rides that are within their home zone, which those rides in your home zone would be easier to commute to, maybe 10 miles or less, or 15 miles or less. And then let's see, be easier for them to see, hey, you know, the Thursday night ride that's in my zone. Hey, I could bike to that. It's only, according to this, about 8 miles from my house. Could help familiarize them with all the different rides that are near their area, as opposed to driving to them. They could bike to them. And encourage other members to maybe that live near each other to hey, let's meet up at this park and then we'll ride into the ride together.
And Chris, I do think people choose their rides often by doing a search for what town the ride is in for that reason, so that they can bike. I know I do that often for TCBC rides. I'll choose a bike ride that I know I could ride to. Also, it's helpful when the ride leaders are just supportive of letting people drop off at the very end to go home. So I know Edward and Tim, you let me do this sometimes. So when we're near my house, I'll just end the ride there, as opposed to then going to back to the start location and then biking back to my house. So I think having ride leaders know that's a choice can be great for people who are trying to bike to a ride.
As far as the zones thing, maybe come up with some sort of map that would break down each region, and then you could have the rides listed for those regions, maybe in a key down at the bottom of the map or something like that.
Oh, that's a great idea. I have an idea. I wonder if people who are commuting to work would ever like company with a group of TCBC riders or not. Maybe, maybe you want to ride by yourselves, or maybe you want to have more flexibility as when you leave your house. But it's something to think about.
I'm open to that. My ride is so much shorter than a TCBC ride that
Yeah,
it's not the right length.
right. But it could be embellished. You know, we could drop you off to work and go somewhere else. Can anybody think of any ways that we could encourage TCBC members to, or recognize TCBC members for commuting to errands and work? Maybe we should allow green miles recognition for commuting to other than ride starts. Does anybody have any thoughts about that?
Or
What I was thinking is maybe set up a Strava club where you can take that and record that ride from the house to the group ride and then mark it as a commute, and then it would be easier to track members' miles commuting to the rides over the season.
Mhm.
we don't have too much of a problem with that. I think what Tim was saying is, you know, we could develop another type of mileage, which would just be commuter miles, and that people would report those like we do the Green Miles program. The Green Miles is totally, you know, on your honor, you know, to and from, but it has saved quite a bit of CO2. I think we were like over 2 and something metric tons this past year. Do you all, the two of you, keep track of sort of how much gas and CO2 that you've saved by commuting, or is that something on your radar?
I record all my rides with Strava, and one of the new features that Strava just added in the last few months was the amount of CO2 savings that ride had come up with, and it'll give you an actual number. So it's kind of cool seeing that.
Wow, I hadn't seen that yet.
How do you come up with that, Edward? On your rides?
It's a double secret formula. No, it's
Into
it's
formula.
it's just purely the number of miles, the average miles per gallon that
Okay.
a car would take, and then I, use the formula from there to say how much was saved,
Okay.
how many gallons was saved, and the average. There were Tim, I don't know if you had some other questions, but from the John put a thing on the Bike Trail Navigator, and I'll put that in the on the webpage afterwards too, so that your blogspot there, Chris. So we'll put that in. And I had a question. Do either of your places of work provide incentive to commute by bike?
Mine do. So there's Zap that I have the little plastic zapper on my bike. So I get zapped when I go into work, and then I save $600 on my health insurance every year.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah, my work does not, but I just enjoy commuting to work, and it's great for your mental health. I'll have a really rough day and hop on the bike, put on some good music, and just kind of drift away and let my mind be at ease for the 10-mile ride home. So for me, it's more about a mental health on the way home. It's a great stress reliever. Restaurant industry is very stressful, and that's my de-stress therapy after a long day.
Chris, I had a question. You had talked about that you have the radar in the back, and I know a lot of other people that have gotten that and say, I don't know how I ever did without it. What do you use on the camera on the front? I hadn't heard that before. Is there different types, or is there one that you use?
I have an old GoPro Hero 9, and I have a K-edge mount. So I mount it right below my light so my light doesn't interfere with it. And so it's right in center line with the front tire. So it basically gives kind of a lower POV view of what I see. And I can record, I think a 512 gig card in it, so I can record up to 8 hours of high def video with it. But the batteries only last about 80, 90 minutes. So I will bring extra batteries on longer rides, or I'll bring an extra battery. So I'll swap out when I get to work, I'll swap it out with a fresh one. So when I leave work, I've got a fresh battery for the ride home.
And looking over the chat room, I think John had asked you, Chris, do you have any ideas on how ID zones that you were talking about?
Talked about. He answered that.
Oh, he did. Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
And Dan asked about getting bored. I
Yeah,
haven't
Dan,
gotten bored on my commute
Yeah.
before.
No.
Chris, have you?
Occasionally, but if I have extra time or a little extra energy at the end of a long day, I may take the long way home. And I've got plenty of branches that I can veer off onto and still make it to my destination. Just to kind of change things up a little bit. Maybe take a right and ride by 2 or 3 lakes on my way home instead of the shortcut.
I also
Dan, you
often
used
bump
to
into people I
be
know, so my
a
ride's kind of social.
bicycle messenger, didn't you? Dan, are you there? Dan, you're muted.
That was many years ago. But my question was, I think that when I used to commute to work, and this was a while ago, I didn't have a place really to keep a bike, and it was pretty much an urban route that 11 miles would take a good 45 minutes to do, because it was stop and go and everything else. But I found that it was tough to commit 2 and 2+ hours to just the commute, an hour each way, and just getting ready. And when I got involved with the club, I found it much more interesting to be able to do those rides rather than that standard commute. And so I just was, I battled boredom. So I just was, I know Chris had said it works out good for him. And I think, Sophie, your commute is a little bit shorter than what I experienced.
Yeah, so it would take me longer to drive, so I'm saving time, and so it's a different scenario.
Yep.
Yeah, that's one real advantage with the working at the university, where there is such a parking challenge. It is actually, if you live within, say 8-10 miles of the university and work or go to school there, it is almost quicker and a lot more fun to commute. Any other questions? How are we doing on time, Edward?
We're fine.
Well, I wanted to hear what kind of music Chris listens to, because that's important, right? And Sophie too.
Well, it depends on my mood at the time and how tired I am. If I'm after a 10-hour day, if I'm just beat and I got the 10-mile ride home, I'm gonna take a slow roll and maybe listen to some reggae or listen to something a little more mellow. If I'm feeling energetic, then it's alternative rock or metal, or I listen to pretty much across the board. On my way into work, I usually listen to podcasts, and then on my way home, I'll listen to a full-length album, because it takes me about 45-50 minutes to get home. So it's the perfect length of an album. So I'll listen to an album from beginning to end, and by the time I'm rolling into the driveway, the album's just about finished.
So what was it today?
Today I did about a 10-mile ride before work, because I had to be at this thing today, so I didn't commute to work.
Yeah. All right. And Sophie, you listen?
I don't listen to anything while I bike.
You just listen to nature
Yes.
and you're spinning. Do either of you have like a weird or funny story? What's your goofiest thing that's happened along one of your commutes?
I run into a lot of wildlife on my commutes. I go past several parks that have lakes and woods. So deer and turkeys are my two most common things that I come across. There was one time I was coming down County Road 11 in Burnsville towards Burnsville Parkway, and I'm doing about 20-22 miles an hour down the hill, and had to hit the brakes and slow down because I got 6 turkeys walking slowly across 4 lanes of traffic ahead of me. And another time I was heading home, climbing up a big hill on a bike path on the same road, and I had my headlights, my helmet light and my bar light on, and I'm moving along at a pretty good pace, probably about 16-18 miles an hour, and something caught the corner of my eye on the left, and I slowed down, and there's an 8-point buck standing about 2 feet off the trail, just standing there, and then he's seen me and bolted, but I didn't want him bolting in front of me, so I made sure I slowed down. I seen him before he saw me. But yeah, a lot of wildlife is what I've seen on my commutes.
Cool. Love it.
I mean, I can say I make a point if I ever see a rider down, I always stop and ask them if they need help. And one time this semester, I stopped to ask them if they need help, and it was actually a woman I work with and didn't know
Oh.
that she was a cyclist. So that was fun. And I've had a lot of times that I was just on the same commute with some student I hadn't seen in 9 years, 8 years, and then we do a part of our ride together. For me, it's a very social ride. I bump into Edward, I bump into Tim. That's the fun part for me too.
Great. It's fun.
There was a question from Dan. Chris, do you use earbuds when you're listening to music, or are you?
Yes, I do. But I keep my volume down enough to where I can hear ambient noises. And I'm constantly scanning with my eyes.
And there was a reference, and I know this from experience of riding with Sophie. What's the secret of potatoes, Sophie?
When I go on long rides, I don't like eating a lot of processed junk and bars. So I bring little potatoes, fingerlings, and I just cover them in salt and I put them in a plastic bag. And many of you have had them with me on rides. They give you a lot of energy.
Yes.
It's a lot of carbs, but not so much just straight sugar. And it helps me a lot more to be able to have carbs without all the sugar when I'm riding. And have something that's not processed, an actual fresh food.
Yeah, they definitely helped.
She whips them out at the perfect time, especially if you're on like a Century or a Metric or something like that.
That was a trick I learned from Mark Ambro, who used to work at Freewheel.
One of my favorite fuel foods that I'll bring along in my frame bag, especially for like long gravel rides too, is fig bars. You know, lots of carbohydrates that give you that energy you need to keep from bonking.
Chris, do you want to talk about your Bicycle Navigator blogspot too?
Sure. Started it back in December of 2011. I found that I was going onto the web and Googling to find if, hey, I want to ride the Gateway Trail this weekend, but I know nothing about it. I've never been on it, you know, at that time. So I wanted to get information on where trailheads were, map information, mileages, that sort of thing. And I found myself Googling all the time to find the information because there was no one single source. So I decided to create one that I used all the time back then because I had all my links and everything for map pages around the Twin Cities and greater Minnesota based on regions. So if I was going up to northern Minnesota and wanted to ride a trail up there, like let's say the Mesabi, I could go to my site, click on the Mesabi Trail, print out a map, find out where the trailheads are, that sort of thing. Then I started writing articles and reviewing products. I had a lot of more time back then to do that sort of thing. And I started a ride calendar that I've been doing every year since 2012. List as many cycling events that I can come across and put them up on there with links to registration, more information, Facebook event pages, that sort of thing. So I could go on there and my followers could go on there and say, hey, what's going on this weekend? Where are the rides? So they can go on the April calendar and scroll down and go, oh, wow, there's all sorts of stuff this weekend. So that was kind of my inspiration to start the blog. And then about 6 months after I started the blog, the Minnesota Department of Tourism put up their Pedal MN, or I believe it was the Pedal MN site, pedalmn.org. And it lasted for a couple of years and then kind of faded away. And I just kept doing my thing. And And now I don't have much time to write articles anymore, so I just kind of keep up to date on all the calendar events that pop up every single day. So I'm constantly updating the calendars, and I probably have the most thorough calendar of events for the state of Minnesota that's in one location. It's a lot of work, but it's a labor of love, and it's basically, I want to get people out there riding, you know, from a cycling advocacy point. That's one of the other main reasons why I started the blog.
That's amazing, Chris. I'm going to put on some good music after this and check out your blog.
All right.
Right.
Do you keep track of trail closers too, or?
I try to, though it's kind of tough. I follow social media a lot, and I've got a lot of different bike groups and organizations that I follow, so that I'm in the loop on those sort of things. But, you know, because of time restraints, I don't always able to, you know, get those listed. And I have people that will send me emails saying, we've got some dead links on this page. Could you please update them? And I'll get around to updating them.
Tim, anything else that you have? And
No, I think I'm good. If anyone else has any more questions.
I could ask one more.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So I usually, well, maybe two. A few years ago, we had a session on winter riding. It was just specifically winter riding. And I had found this from the University of Minnesota, this professor that had made this happiness commuting map. Are either of you familiar with that? Have you seen it? And so it's not just biking, but biking is the way to commute that makes people the happiest. And it's got like a heat map of no matter what your commuting means is, what pathways make you the happiest. And of course, up and down along the river road is one of them. And I think I copied it here, and you can check it out later yourself, but it's pretty cool. But my question, that's not really a question, was, and I think you both kind of started with this, but every year I go to the advocacy day at the Capitol for BikeM, Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota, and they get us to go visit with our legislators about creating more bike infrastructure, stuff like that. And there's always a bunch of people there that ride their bikes to the advocacy day, and you start talking to a couple of them, and they like can't remember, they have a car, but they can't remember the last time they used it. It's got cobwebs all over it and stuff like that. And and I always think, okay, I'm going to start being like that, And what's your motivation to keep doing this? Is it, you each talked about that a little bit, but like, what's the main thing that, on a day where you think, maybe I'll just drive today? What's the main thing that makes you just, nope, I'm going to stick with what I'm doing. I'm going to ride my bike to work and back.
I mean, I guess I can start. So being a bike commuter adds a little adventure to every day. So even if other things don't work out quite the way you wanted them in your day, you've done something that's good for the environment, you've done something that's good for your body, something that's good for your mental health, and you've added a little adventure to your day. And that's fun. On a really freezing day, I like that nod I get from another winter commuter too. We're in this together. There's a sense of solidarity. I believe what you said, John, about River Road, as I go over the Mississippi River every day, I often have bald eagles fly right next to me, just right next to the bike, which is a very transcendental experience.
Yeah.
We were a single car family when I had little kids. I have taken my kids to the ER in a Burley bike trailer. You can do all sorts of things on a bike when you don't have a car. And I guess I'll stop there, but I think I keep doing it because it makes me so happy and I love it.
Yeah, nice. Love it.
Yeah, to quote Banjo Brothers, one of their slogans is ride bikes, be happy. And that's the main reason I ride. It's for my mental health. It gives me some alone time away from work, away from family, gives you time to reflect on yourself, gives you time in nature, which I think more people need, is just to get outside. You know, I'm not an inside person. I've been an outdoorsman all my life, and getting out on the bike is something that makes me happy. And when the weather is good, that makes me want to get out there even more. A little less when the weather's foul, but I'll still go out there because I know I have the gear and the knowledge and the clothing to tackle it. And then when you get to work, you feel great.
And
Thank you.
Dan, I've never had fenders that worked. Mine have always gotten misaligned. So I gave up on them.
Okay. Thank you both. That's inspiring. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it now.
So I feel the same way about green miles. I kind of sort of get in the mood for going to the ride. I usually ride a little slower and take my time, look at stuff. And then sort of after ride, it's kind of a way to relax afterwards. But it somewhat similar. Any other questions before we just say the final bit here? So
Yeah, I've got one last question.
sure.
And it's so you both get out and ride regularly commuting, and you've been doing this for a number of years. Have you noticed changes in the weather? And this is basically based on climate change, and it's my I can't prove it or not. I just find myself running into more difficult weather when I go out to bike than I used to, or at least that's my assumption. Maybe I was just stronger a long time ago, but have you noticed that? Either of you? That you have either high winds or you've got smoke coming in from the wildfires, or it's super hot or super, have you just noticed differences, or is it just part of your everyday stuff? And I'm not
This
trying.
year, this winter has been one of the mildest I can ever remember. And I was commuting on my gravel bike back in January, which is I've never done before. And all through February and into March, which usually in the past 6 or 7 years, I would usually start commuting like the second to third week of March on my gravel commuter bike, as opposed to the fat bike. And this year was completely different. The El Nino totally messed up our weather patterns. And the Canadian wildfires last year was pretty bad too. There was some days I probably shouldn't have rode because the particulates in the air were so high. One day it kind of caught me off guard and it got real bad in the evening. And I took the short way home, which I normally don't take. And I made sure that I wasn't exerting myself too much to keep my breathing at a lower rate. And it was bad that day. And I hope that we don't have those issues this summer, but with how dry everything's been, I'm thinking that Canada is going to send a bunch more smoke our way this summer.
And I ride masked when there are wildfires.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do the same. Sophie, I got a mask during COVID that it's actually a mask for smoke and has exhalation valves, and I'll use that. And I think you're right, Chris. I think it's going to be another bad year for smoke. So anything else? Okay, so thanks again, Sophie and Chris, for speaking to us, and for Tim, thanks for putting the
Yeah,
program
thank
together.
you guys.
Yep.
Thank you
for
guys
having
so
me.
much. Your passion for bicycling in general and commuting in particular is just palpable, and it's been a real treasure to have you guys share your experiences with us tonight. So thanks so much.
Yeah, I thought there was some great tips, even if you're not a commuter, that I wrote down. So a big thanks to all of you for attending the session tonight. The recording will be up shortly after it's uploaded to our TCBC YouTube channel, and there will be a link on the main BikeU webpage. TCBC BikeU Council of Regents is working on other sessions, including the TCBC Tuesday Tune-Up Ride and their 25th anniversary, which was last year, and looking at that as a model. They have a number of ride leaders and have a consistent ride, and that's something that we've strived to do as a club, that you can always count on Tuesday. There'll be a Tuesday tune-up, or on Wednesday night, the whole enchilada, etc. If you have other ideas for programs, please write to us at BikeU@biketcbc.org, and the council will discuss them at our next meeting. So thank you again for attending, and we hope to see you again next time.